It is a cold October morning in 1805. The wind howls across the Atlantic like a hungry wolf, snapping at sails and rattling rigging. The smell of salt and gunpowder fills the air. Beneath the her black and gold hull gleaming, her masts reaching high like cathedral spires, her figurehead a silent guardian staring into the storm. This is HMS Victory. But to call her just a ship is like calling the crown jewels just some stones. HMS Victory is a floating fortress, a masterpiece of wood, iron, and human willpower, a ship that will bear witness to the thunder of cannons, the screams of men, and the clash of empires. She is more than a machine of war. She is a living, breathing symbol of courage. And yet, before she became legend, she was just a dream, the birth of a titan. In the mid-18th century, Britain was locked in a never-ending struggle for dominance over the seas. France and Spain challenged her might, their fleets growing ever larger and more advanced. The Admiralty decided they needed something bigger, stronger, and more fearsome than anything that had come before, a flagship worthy of leading the Royal Navy into the jaws of battle. The task was given to shipwright Sir Thomas Slade, a man whose hands could turn timber into destiny. In 1759, in the dockyards of Chatham, HMS Victory began to take shape. Oak trees, some more than a century old, were felled, over 6,000 of them, to build her hull, decks, and masts. It took 6 years of labor, sweat, and craftsmanship to birth her into the world. She was massive, 227 feet long, 104 guns, manned by over 800 sailors and marines. The moment she touched the water in 1765, people gasped. She was not just a warship, she was the pride of Britain itself. But for years, Victory waited. She saw some service in the American War of Independence, but her moment of eternal fame had not yet come. That moment would arrive in 1805, under the command of a man whose name would be etched forever into history, Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson. The call to battle. The year was one of fear and uncertainty. Napoleon Bonaparte, ruler of France, had plans to invade Britain. His combined French and Spanish fleets posed a deadly threat. Nelson was given the task of stopping them. His flagship, HMS Victory. For the men aboard, life was a mix of pride and hardship. The decks were crowded, the air thick with the smell of tar, sweat, and salt pork. Hammocks were slung side by side, barely enough room to turn. Food was rationed. Fresh water was precious. Disease lurked in the shadows. Yet morale was high, for they sailed with Nelson, brave, unshakable, and cunning as the sea itself. On the morning of October 21, 1805, Nelson's fleet spotted the enemy off the coast of Spain. The French and Spanish ships formed a massive line, their sails like a wall across the horizon. Nelson, aboard Victory, prepared for what would become the most famous naval battle in British history. His strategy was bold, reckless, some said. Instead of fighting parallel to the enemy line, he would cut through it, breaking their formation and throwing them into chaos. Before the first shot was fired, Nelson sent a signal from Victory's mast. Greater than, England expects that every man will do his duty. The men cheered. They knew these might be the last words they ever read. Victory led the charge. As she approached the enemy line, she came under withering fire. Cannonballs smashed into her hull, splinters tearing through flesh. The noise was deafening. Thunderclaps of cannon fire, the cracking of timber, the screams of the wounded. For 20 agonizing minutes, Victory endured a storm of iron before she could fire back. When she finally broke through the line, she unleashed her full fury, broadsides that shook the sea itself. Her gunners, trained to a deadly rhythm, loaded and fired with machine-like precision. The enemy ships buckled under the assault, but Victory came at a terrible cost. High on Victory's quarterdeck, Nelson was struck by a musket ball from a French sniper. He fell, knowing the wound was mortal. Carried below deck, he asked repeatedly how the battle was going. When told the enemy was broken and the day won, he whispered, "Greater than, thank God I have done my duty." Moments later, Britain's greatest naval hero was gone. The Battle of Trafalgar was a decisive British victory. The French and Spanish fleets were shattered. Napoleon's invasion plans lay in ruins. But the price was heavy. Hundreds dead, the decks of Victory slick with blood. Nelson's body was preserved in a barrel of brandy for the journey home, a grim but necessary act to honor him with a proper burial. Victory herself limped back to port, battered but unbroken. She had been hit over 100 times, her masts shattered, her rigging torn, but she had lived up to her name. Most ships after such battles faded into obscurity or were scrapped. But not Victory. She continued to serve for decades, then became a training ship. In the 20th century, she was restored and preserved as a national treasure. Today, she rests in Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, the oldest commissioned warship in the world still afloat. Walking her decks today, you can still hear echoes of Trafalgar, the creak of timber underfoot, the slap of rope against mast, the whispered voices of men long gone. In 3D recreations, you can see her as she was, every cannon, every sail, every detail brought to life, as if you were stepping into history itself. HMS Victory is more than an artifact. She is a reminder that courage often comes in the face of certain death, that leadership is not about surviving the battle but about inspiring others to fight it. Nelson's words still hang in the air. England expects that every man will do his duty. They speak not just to sailors of the past, but to all of us, to face challenges head-on, no matter the odds, and to leave behind something worth remembering. The sea is quieter now. The cannons are silent, but HMS Victory still stands, a bridge between centuries, her spirit forever sailing on the wind. The moment you step aboard HMS Victory, even in a 3D recreation, you feel something shift in the air. The deck is not just wood and rope, it's history beneath your feet. The oak planks creak softly, worn smooth by the boots of sailors who fought and died more than 2 centuries ago. The smell is different here: tar, rope, salt, and the faint ghost of gunpowder. Light filters in through narrow gunports, casting long slivers of gold across the deck. It's quiet now, but close your eyes, and the silence begins to fill with the sounds of the past: shouted orders, the ring of hammers on nails, the crack of cannon fire. Victory was not built to be beautiful, though she is. She was built to be invincible. Every inch of her was crafted for war. The hull, 2 feet thick in places, made from English oak so strong it could deflect cannonballs at a distance. But at close range, it splintered, deadly wooden shards tearing through flesh. The masts and rigging, 3 towering masts and a complex web of over 26 miles of rope, each line with a specific purpose: raising sails, turning yards, holding the ship steady in a storm. The guns, 104 cannons, arranged on 3 gun decks. The lower decks 32-pounders were the ship's heavy hitters, capable of punching holes through enemy hulls. The middle and upper decks carried lighter guns for faster fire. The figurehead, a carved representation of Victory herself, a silent guardian at the bow, leading the ship into the jaws of battle. Victory carried over 800 souls, sailors, marines, officers, cooks, surgeons, and even boys as young as 12 who served as powder monkeys. Life here was hard, and there was no escape. Hammocks were crammed close together, offering little privacy. The food was simple: salt beef, hardtack biscuits, and pea soup. Fresh water was rationed, and rum was issued daily to keep morale high. Discipline was strict. Punishments were public: flogging with a cat-o'-9 tails for theft or disobedience. And yet, in the close quarters of the ship, a strange kind of brotherhood formed. The men depended on each other for survival. They laughed, fought, sang, and sometimes wept together. The lower decks of Victory were dark, cramped, and alive with activity. In a 3D guide, you can walk through these spaces as they were during her prime. The gun decks, rows of cannons, each manned by a team of sailors. Training here was constant: load, run out, fire, sponge, reload, every movement drilled until it became instinct. The orlop deck, the lowest enclosed deck, where the surgeon worked. Here, during battle, the air was thick with the smell of blood and the cries of the wounded. The surgeon's tools, bone saws, scalpels, clamps, were laid out like instruments of grim music. There was no anesthesia, only rum or a bullet to bite. The magazine, deep in the belly of the ship, guarded by Marines, was the powder magazine. Here, barrels of gunpowder were stored, the most dangerous place on board. Any spark could mean instant death for everyone. In the summer of 1805, the sea was restless, not just with storms, but with war. Napoleon's plans to invade Britain depended on controlling the English Channel. His French and Spanish fleets needed to unite, but Nelson meant to stop them. Victory left Portsmouth in May, her decks scrubbed, her crew ready. For months, Nelson chased the enemy across the Atlantic and back, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. His patience, strategy, and refusal to give up kept the French from gaining the upper hand. By October, the stage was set. Off Cape Trafalgar, Nelson found his enemy, and the world would never forget what happened next. The night before Trafalgar, Victory lay quiet at anchor. The wind whispered through the rigging, lanterns flickered in the darkness. Below deck, the men sharpened cutlasses, checked their pistols, and wrote letters, some to sweethearts, others to mothers they might never see again. Nelson walked the deck, speaking to the men, offering words of encouragement. He knew many would not survive the day, and he wanted them to know he saw them not as numbers, but as brothers in arms. One young sailor later recalled, "The Admiral spoke to me as if I were his own son. I swore I would fight to my last breath for him." Dawn broke on October 21 with a red sky, a sailor's warning. The French and Spanish fleets stretched across the horizon, their sails like a wall. Nelson divided his fleet into two columns. Victory led one. HMS Royal Sovereign led the other. The plan was simple but deadly: break the enemy line and fight ship to ship. At 11:45 a.m., the signal was raised from Victory's mast.